appellate court, and they gave a ruling that Nnamdi Kanu should be released. And now we hear this comments, and we know that up to now he has not been released. A lawyer said earlier on that the court only has the unction to really give orders for the release, but the court cannot really bring the person out of the prison, right? So Huriwa has really come out to, extend their voice towards the detention of Nnamdi Kanu, as they put it. And Huriwa has also said that the further detention of Nnamdi Kanu will be regarded as kidnapping. What's your take on this, Barrister Arachuku?
The law is that once a court gives a decision on a matter, that decision given by the court is the law, pending when it is vacated by an appellate court. Even if a court gives a decision on a matter for which it does not have jurisdiction, that decision remains pending when it is vacated by an appellate court. Even when a court gives a decision on a matter that it does not have jurisdiction, until it is so declared by a higher court, it still remains the position of the law. The reason is very simple, and you don't need to be a law to know that. For the purposes of sanctity, law and order and discipline in the society, decisions of the law courts ought and must be obeyed, pending when a higher court gives a contrary position. Should the higher court hold on to the position of the lower court, it still remains the law until the apex court gives a decision. So if a court makes awards to me, for instance, that I'm the owner of a particular landed property in dispute, I remain the owner until the Court of Appeal says that I'm not the owner. And if the Court of Appeal says I'm not the owner, that remains the position of the law until the Supreme Court says I'm the owner, or holds on that my counterpart or my adversary as being the owner. The idea is that let there be sanity, let there be sanctity, let there be honor, let there be discipline. Let public policy and stability of the society, the sanity of the society, be maintained. So if the court have said Nnamdi Kanu ought and should be released, Nnamdi Kanu ought and should be released, except a higher court says, either by their final decision or by interlocutory ruling, that he ought and should not be released. If the Court of Appeal gives a decision and the Supreme Court says, look, by an interlocutory application or by a final decision that Nnamdi should not be released, Nnamdi remains in prison. So for anybody to go contrary to the position of the Court of Appeal, the person is causing crisis and instability in the state, and it's unacceptable.
Even if it's the executive or the...
No. The court decision for the parties that are involved in the court decision is binding on them. It doesn't matter whether the decision was given by the customary court. In fact, if two people go on arbitration, even before a date, the decision of the date is bound on the parties who willingly submitted themselves to the arbitration to the date. Even if it's to the chief's palace, and two people are willingly submitted themselves, you are bound by it. Except you take the legal processes and procedures required for you to say, this, I am not bound by this decision. Just as there are legal procedures and processes through which you can say, I am not bound, I'm not comfortable with the Court of Appeal decision. And the process is to initiate the process of appeal, to properly and validly enter an appeal, and for the appeal to be heard. But in all cases, the position of the law remains same. If I go before a deity, or I go before the chief palace to take an oath or to arbitrate a matter, and after the arbitration I'm not comfortable with it and I felt that irregularity has been done, what I ought and should do is to raise an alarm on the spot, to complain about it, and to meet the condition required by law for you to set aside such, and possibly appeal to higher authority or even the courts to set it aside. So the point here is that once the court has given a decision, it doesn't matter who is involved. It doesn't matter whether it's the federal government of the federation or government of the state or the local government or the all-powerful traditional ruler or minister. The decision of the court is final and it ought and must be obeyed. And in fact, any decision of the court that is not appealed or challenged in a situation that there is a legal provision for you to challenge them, it remains the law.
So the question is, why is he still in detention? If the court has given an order that he should be
in
released.
Africa,
Yes.
in Nigeria, the government, the executive, disobeying position of courts is rampant and common. And we can't pretend as Nigerian citizens or Africans that we have not seen where the position or the ruling of courts are being outrightly disobeyed. So it's just one of the many cases of disobedience to court order. And disobedience to court order is a precipice or a forerunner to instability, to crisis. Because if you disobey court order, or pick and choose the court order to obey and disobey, then it gives confidence or courage to members of the public, particularly when it's coming from the government, to choose court to obey or not to disobey, or even to choose the government policy to obey and disobey. It goes to the weakness of the states in Africa. It goes to the weakness of the institutions. It goes to reinforce the role of powerful individuals who often override or over-influence or influence even official positions of state institutions and policies of government.
So you're insinuating this can really cause a chaos in society?
Of course it can. The government is expected to be, the government made a law. And of course, if a law is made, the person who made the law ought to be the most respecter of that law. And if the government proceeds to disobey its own law, what do you expect the citizens to do? To obey the law? So if the court has said Nnamdi Kanu should be released, then Nnamdi Kanu should be released. We have three arms of government. We have the executive, we have the legislature, we have the judiciary. Each and all of them work within independence and interrelatedness. And the position of each of them is constitutionally defined. And the pronouncement of policies or programs coming out of them from and within their constitutional powers ought and must be obeyed by the other. So if the executive gives a directive within their constitutional powers, or the legislature makes a law within their acts within their constitutional power, or even the judiciary, if it is binding on all the institutions of state, all the citizens, and the entire government structure in itself. So if the National Assembly makes a law pertaining to environment, will the Ministry of Works, Agriculture, Education go to violate that law because they are a state ministry? Will a judge go to violate the environmental laws made by the government, assuming he wants to build a house, set up a structure, or do something because he's a judge? Will the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria violate the law because he's the president, or even the so-called presidency? You must bind the law. The same thing is applicable to the decision of the court. Once the court has made a decision, until that decision is vacated, it remains the position of the law, and it must be respected. It must be obeyed. It is not the courts are not seeking your position. They are not begging you. They are not patronizing you. They are not trying to placate or to make. They are not trying to make you happy whether you obey the decision of the courts.
Right. So
once the pronouncement is made, it's made. And Nnamdi must obey, and Arochukwu must obey, and every other person must obey, as a matter of fact, and immediately, pending when a contrary position is held by a higher court of jurisdiction.
So you mean that this is a deliberate disobedience from the Minister of Justice?
If the minister and the government of the federation
and the
are
Security
choosing
Council,
to
yes.
Who is Security Council when the court has spoken? The Security Council must obey. There's nothing like Security Council. There's nothing like Economic Council. There's nothing like the president. The court has spoken and you must obey. I use the word must. I have not seen anywhere in our laws as a lawyer where they say that the position of the court is subject to. It is clear. If you are saying, for instance, that I have 5 charges, I have been discharged of 4, you are holding me because of 1. The law must be such that you hold me because of 1. If the law says irrespective of 5 charges, I'm discharged and acquitted, you must obey to the extent. If the law says I'm discharged but not acquitted, you must obey to that extent. The position of the law is clear. In terms of obedience, it's complete and total. It's not negotiable. So if the court had told Nnamdi Kanu to go, then he has to leave. However, that does not suggest that if you told Nnamdi Kanu to leave and he's leaving the courtroom, you cannot rearrest him less than a kilometer from the courtroom for some other set of charges or offense. That does not suggest that. A man can discharge me for, court can acquit and discharge me for armed robbery, and you rearrest me for Afre.
So you mean the matter of renditions raised by the Justice, that's the Attorney General of Nigeria, will come up? And
the government can bring charges against any citizen if they are convinced that the citizen has committed an offense. The police and other relevant state institutions that are responsible for the maintenance of law and order, they can bring charges. But the question is that in bringing charges, the full procedure of the law must be obeyed. The full processes of the law must be obeyed. It doesn't matter where you bring 10,000 charges against me on a particular day.
In this particular case, which process should the Nigerian government or the
Nigerian government have filed their case in court? They have charged Nnamdi Kanu to court. And their case is before the court. And the Court of Appeal has given a decision. Then the Court of Appeal decision must be obeyed. But what I'm trying to tell you is that if the Nigerian government still have another case they want to file against Nnamdi Kanu, unrelated to the charges they have filed before, they are free to file. And if the charges call for him being detained, he may be detained. That's if the charges call for him not to be granted bail, he may be granted bail. But as far as this particular one, of which the court, if the court has acquitted and discharged him, it is not within the position of the government to decide whether they will release him or not. In fact, the release should be from that court where he was acquitted and discharged. He should be walking out of the court a free man. But as I told you, if they have some other charges against him, it's a different ballgame altogether. But as far as this particular one is, all the parties involved must obey the law compulsorily. And it is not within their whims and caprices whether they will obey the law or not. They must obey the law. That is why it is called law. After all, that law was made with Buhari in mind, me in mind, you Nnamdi in mind, all the people who constitute the Security Council in mind, the entire DSS or the police in mind, but with all Nigerians in mind, comprising all of us. So when the National Assembly is making laws ought and should be neutral. They are not trying to pander to your emotion, to my emotions by virtue of standard, but are trying to pander to the emotions of Nigerians, to the well-being of Nigerians, to the goodwill of Nigerians, to the security of Nigerians, to their health, to their prosperity, to their protection. That is not to suggest that human emotions and weaknesses does not come into all these processes, but ordinarily by standards. This is what ought and it should be. And therefore, if the court have said Nnamdi Kanu should go, Nnamdi Kanu should leave.
All right. I was going to really ask who is going to go there, bring him out of the prison.
The process of going and bringing him out of the prison is
yes.
simple. He was handed over to somebody from the beginning, who was keeping him from the beginning. I think he was charged to court. Applications were made for bail, it was refused. Somebody arrested him. Somebody kept him. Somebody brought him to that court. Somebody brought him to that court now. Somebody arrested and brought him to that court. Somebody filed motions to refuse him bail. Somebody joined issues with him, with his lawyers. Isn't it? So you are asking who will bring him back. The person who is holding him should let him go. It is simple. You put him under lock and key in a room. Is there anything complicated about it? And the court has told him to leave from the courtroom. Holding him back into any vehicle, back to where you held him lock and key is egregious. It's completely unacceptable. It's unlawful. They say he should leave and he should leave. The spirit authority have told you let him be. Who are you then to keep him? If you are dissatisfied, you go to the higher court and seek for him to be further kept by way of appealing the decision, by way of asking for him to be further kept. But anything contrary to that, you have to let him be.
All right.
That man that brought him to court, that man who will release him is that individual, that set of characters that drove him to that court that very day, put him in the witness bar and were hanging around for any decision of that court to be taken. After they went to court because they expected the court to give a ruling. Assuming the court said they should keep him, wouldn't they have willingly done so? So now the court said you should leave him. Why wouldn't you do so? You and I went to court. I hope to get the property. You hope to get it. Everybody is hoping that the decision of the court will favor him. Now the decision of the court favors Nnamdi, I refuse to obey. So I will have expected Nnamdi, if the decision of the court favors me, let him obey. And that is why there is punishment and reward. And that is why there are rules and regulations. And that is why we talk about democracy. And that is why he's saying that democracy is rule of law. If it's under dictatorship, and I'm the dictator, possibly an army general, a civilian dictator, and I can overrule the position. And that is why we canvass against dictatorship. That is why we say about democracy and the rule of law. Right. Therefore, let the law rule, because the man who brought him to court brought him according to the law. The man who gave order for him to be detained gave the order according to the law. And the man who told you to leave him did so according to the law. So that is the law prevails.